Thank you for inviting me into your home to teach you how to knit on video. This is a wonderful way to learn a new project because you can rewind as many times as you need to, and I'll still be right there ready to show you how to do each step of the process. So I ought to tell you a little bit about myself so you know why I'm the best person to be teaching you how to do this. I have been knitting for 10 years. I'm a wonderful knitter, and you will be too by the time that you finish the video. You'll feel like you can start any new project and you'll be able to complete it with confidence. So let's go ahead and begin. The first thing that we're going to talk about are the needles and the yarn that we're going to use on our first project. I'm going to show you the very basic steps. All of the knitting that we're going to do will be based on two basic stitches. There's a knit stitch and a purl stitch, and the thing that's fun about that is on one side, what looks like knitting, if you turn it over, it looks like purling from the other side. So when we begin, we'll do a row of knitting, a row of purling, and you'll be able to see the difference. So let's begin with needles. You can use any needles that you choose. We have needles in several different sizes and styles. There are metal needles and plastic needles. There are also needles in the round. You can use any type of needles for these projects that we're going to work on today. So if you have needles already, anything that you're comfortable with, any size that you're comfortable with, that will be fine. Same thing goes for yarn. You can use any kind of yarn. If you have a color that you especially like, you can use whatever you'd like to do today. It will be best if you work with a solid color yarn so that you can see your stitches on the very first project that we work on. So let's begin by learning how to cast on. First, I'm going to show you how to hold your hands and cast the thread onto the needle. That's how all knitting projects are begun. You're going to use one needle, not both, to begin your casting on process. And this is where you're going to start. You need to begin with a slip knot. We'll grasp the yarn between thumb and forefinger, wrap the yarn around two fingers, secure with the thumb and forefinger again, remove the two fingers, bring the yarn from behind and through the loop, and then pull to secure, and you'll have your loop. Then go ahead and slide it onto your needle and pull to tighten, and then you'll be ready to begin. The first thing that we're going to work on will only have 10 stitches, and so as you can see, I've allowed about a foot of yarn on the short end. You will separate the two pieces of yarn with your thumb and first finger, and then grasp the yarn, both pieces, with your remaining fingers. Okay, now you're ready to begin to cast on. This part looks a little bit tricky, but just work with me and you'll do just fine. Point your needle towards your thumb, come around to the first yarn, secure it on the end of the needle, come around, point to your first finger, and secure the needle behind that piece of yarn, and then pull it through the loop. Remove your thumb from the circle and pull the string tight. We've just cast on one stitch. Let's do it again. Point the needle at your thumb, come around the outside of that piece of yarn, grasp it onto the needle, turn the needle to point at your finger, bring it around the piece of yarn and through the hole. Remove your thumb and pull the string. And now we have cast on 2 stitches. If you look at the needle, you can see there are now 3 stitches on the needle. The first one was where we had secured our slip knot. The second one we cast on, and the third one we cast on. We're going to continue in this fashion until we have 10 stitches cast on. So we're going to start now with our next stitch. Again, point at your thumb, around, secure the yarn, point at your finger, around, secure the yarn, pull it through the loop, remove your thumb, and pull the string. We're now at 4. Let's speed up just a little. Point at your thumb, secure the yarn, point at your finger, secure the yarn, pull it through the loop, remove your thumb, and pull. We're at 5. Point at your thumb, secure the yarn, point at your finger, secure the yarn, pull it through, remove your thumb, and pull. Thumb, secure, finger, secure, through, remove, and pull. We're now at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's getting easier, isn't it? Point, secure, through, remove, and pull. 8. Point, secure, through, remove, and pull. Point, secure, through, remove, and pull. We now have 10 stitches that we've cast onto our needle, and it looks just like this. You can count each of these, and these will be your stitches. We are counting the slip knot we started with as one of our stitches. So now we're ready to begin to knit. You turn your needle this way. You always work from right to left. You can introduce your second needle at this time. I'm going to show you how best to hold your yarn. The way that I hold my yarn, I slide my pinky finger through, I wrap it around once, and then I hold my needle with this hand. So if you can see, that's how I'm holding my yarn. I'll show you that one more time. I slide my pinky through, around once, and then secure with my needle this way. Okay, we're ready to begin. Take your right needle and insert it into the first loop on your needle. If you saw how I did that, I've entered from the left hand side of the first stitch, and I enter from the front to the back, so my needles are crossed. Now I'm going to take the yarn that's in my right hand, I'm going to bring it around from behind, across the top of my right needle, and between the two needles right here at the tips. I'm going to pull that so that it's tight, so there's tension here, and then I'm going to very carefully use the tip of this right needle to bring that piece of yarn through. Then I'm going to use this right needle to slide that stitch off of the left needle. So now I have 1 stitch on the right needle and 9 stitches on the left. Let's do that again. We're going to enter from the left side of the second stitch, from front to back, sliding it through. Take the yarn in your right hand, bring it around from behind, wrap it around the back needle, and have it come back between the two. Then carefully using the tip of the needle, keep it pressed against the needle in your left hand as you slide it through. You'll now have 2 stitches showing on your right needle, and then you can slide that stitch off of the left needle. So now we have 8 stitches on the left and 2 stitches on the right. Again, slide it from the front to the back, from the left hand side of the third stitch, through, bring your thread from behind, around the needle, use the tip to secure it, and pull it through. Now we've got 3 stitches. If I move just a little bit quicker, you can see that there's a rhythm, and it's actually a very smooth stitch. This will feel awkward initially, but after practice you'll get comfortable with it and it'll go very smoothly for you as well. So again, from the left side of the stitch, from the front to the back, bring the yarn around from behind, around the needle, secure with the point, and pull it through, and then be sure to slide it off of the left hand needle. We're almost done with our first row, so keep working with me. Only 2 more stitches. Go in from the front, wrap around from behind, and pull the yarn through. And our last stitch, again from the front, behind, and through. We've just completed our very first row of knitting. And this is how it should look to you at home. Okay, now we're going to turn it around, and I want you to look at this part so you can see the difference. If you look on this side, I'm going to use this needle to point so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. If you're looking at this side, you can see how there are these little bumps across this needle. This is the way a purl stitch looks. Now I told you that we were knitting. There's knits and there are purls. From the back side, all knitted stitches are purls, and from the front side they will be knits, and the same is true in reverse. So if you've just done a row of purl stitch and you turn it over, it will look like a row of knits. So the front side is knitting and the back side is purling, or the other way around. Look back at the other side just by swiveling your needle up. You can see how these stitches are flat and V-shaped. This is your knit side, the flat V shapes, and if you turn it back, the bumpy sides are your purl stitches. That's how one way that you can tell which side of the work that you're on is whether you're working with the V's from the knitting side or the bumps from the purl side. The second row that we do, we're going to actually do the purl stitch. Now I know it sounds like we're rushing right ahead because you may not feel like you've mastered the knitting stitch yet, but bear with me, they're so much the same that you'll understand why we're doing it this way after we've done our first few rows. Again, you're going to hold your thread the same way, wrap it around your little finger, and then hold your needle in that hand. When we do a purl stitch, the thread will be in front of my right needle, and instead of entering from the left side at the top, I will be entering from the right side at the bottom. So right here, this is where I will enter the stitch in order to complete a purl stitch. Otherwise, the stitch is the same. So entering on our first row of purl stitches, we will enter from the bottom right. We'll take the yarn again behind and around our right needle, slide the needle to the back, and slide it off of the second needle. Let's try that again. Enter from the bottom right, bring it in front of that second needle, take your yarn behind and around, slide the needle to the back of the second needle and off. Again, from the bottom up, wrap the yarn around, slide the needle behind and off. Come up from the bottom, bring the yarn around, slide the needle to the back and off. So now what you're doing is called a purl stitch. And if you'll notice, as I'm doing some of my stitches, you'll see that I use my thumb of my left hand to help control my needles. I'll show you what I mean. As I come up and around with my right hand in the yarn, sometimes you'll see me press my needle down with my left hand, my left thumb. That just sometimes will make your stitch flow a little bit easier and give you control so that you don't lose the thread. So let's do that stitch one more time. As we come up from the bottom, wrap around with the thread, slide the needle to the back, and slide the thread off. Again, up from the bottom, around with the thread, slide the needle to the back and off. We'll do our last two stitches and then we'll be ready to turn. Last stitch, slide up from the bottom, around, behind, and off. Now you can see we've completed 2 full rows. We've done a knit row and a purl row. Now if you turn your piece over, If you look up close at the 2 rows that you've done, if you're looking at the front side now, you'll see that there are 2 rows of V-shaped stitches. This is your front, and these are knit stitches. If we turn it around and look at it from behind, you'll see that there are 2 rows of bumpy stitches, and those are your purl rows. So let's begin again on another knit row. We're just going to do a total of 10 rows so that you can have a sample, a square that shows the difference between knits and purls, so when you're working on our next project you won't get confused and you'll have some confidence as we begin. So let's start another row. Again, we're knitting this time. Don't forget to grab your thread, wrap it around your finger, introduce your needle. The yarn is behind, the needle is in front, and on the knit stitches we're going to enter from the left side of the stitch. So let's work across this next row of knit stitches, entering from the front to the back, wrapping the yarn around, sliding the needle through, and sliding it off of the second needle. We're picking up a bit of speed here, but that's so that you can see that there is some flow. Let's do these last 2 stitches together. Slide the needle in from the front, wrap the yarn from behind, bring the needle to the front, and slide it off the other needle. Again, from the front, wrap around from behind, slide the needle through, and off. Due to movie magic, I have been able to complete 10 rows of the knitting and purling, alternating every other row. And if you can see on this, if you look, yours should look very similar. You'll see on one side, it's all of these V-shaped stitches. This is the knit side. And if you turn it over, you'll see all of the bumpy stitches. And this is your purl side. And just by going back and forth, doing 1 row knit and 1 row purl, you've created this pattern. This is called the stocking stitch. So when you're reading patterns, and it will tell you to knit a row or purl a row and continue in this manner in stocking stitch, that's what they want you to do. They want it to have 1 full side that looks like knits and 1 full side that looks like purls. Okay, so now we're going to go on to learn the next thing that you'll see often in patterns, and that is the garter stitch. The only difference is that we're just going to knit every single row. We're not going to do any purling, we'll just knit every single row. So usually, if you see right here, I should be able to turn around and I should start on a purl row, because this is my bumpy side, remember. But because I'm going to now show you how to do the garter stitch, I'm going to knit on this row. So the next several rows that we do will just be knit rows. So let's refresh again. We're going to let's load it back on our hands. You'll wrap it around your little finger. You'll introduce your next needle. You come from the left side of the stitch. Your yarn is behind, your needle's in front. That's something to always remember with knits. And you'll enter from the front, bring the yarn around, pull your stitch through, and off the needle. We're going to continue in this manner for 5 rows so that you can see the difference and have a pattern of the garter stitch as well on this sample piece. So as I'm coming across the row, I have 3 stitches left, and 2, and 1. Now as I turn it over, again, I'm just going to continue to knit. I'm not going to do any purl stitches. All of these stitches will be knits. So work with me and continue across your row doing knit stitches. Remember, that has your yarn behind, you're entering from the front, you're wrapping your yarn around from behind and pulling the stitch through and off the needle. and 2 and 1. Now continue in this fashion for 5 more rows. Once again, thank you to Movie Magic. I've leaped ahead and completed my rows, and so hopefully your piece will look similar to this. If you look at it from both sides, it'll look the same. So you've got the front and the back. So now we're ready to actually begin our first project. Let me first begin by showing you what the completed item will look like. And this is it right here. This is our dishcloth. You can see that it has a design around the edge. It also is done in a diagonal pattern. And the stitches that I'm going to show you next, they're very simple, but they'll give you this completed project. You can make this any size that you want. You can make it larger to make it as like a chamois, kind of to drive your car at the car wash. You can do it this size. I like this size for doing dishes. You can even do it a little bit smaller if you want something for kind of a scrubber. But the size, the instructions that I'm going to give you today are for the dishcloth size, and your completed dishcloth should measure approximately 10 inches by 10 inches when it's complete. Okay, so let's get ready to begin again. We're going to start with that slip knot. We're going to wrap it around 2 fingers. Pull your fingers out. Bring it from behind, pull it through to make the loop, and pull. Go ahead and slide that onto your needle. The needles that I'm using today are size 7. You can actually see on the end of your needle up here, it'll tell you the size of the needle. Some of the needles have the information right here up near the top, and some of them have the information right here on the head. In order to begin our next project, we're going to only cast on 5 stitches. The reason we're only going to cast on 5 stitches is because if you remember when you looked at this initially, you could see that it goes in a diagonal pattern. We're going to start out down here with only just a few stitches on, and then we're going to increase until we get up to the entire width, and then we're going to decrease again to get to our final size. Okay, so we're ready to begin by casting on our first 5 stitches. So let's go ahead and begin by putting our fingers between the yarn, separating them, and then holding with our other fingers like this to cast on. First, point at your thumb, wrap around, secure, point at your finger, wrap around, secure, pull it through the loop, release your thumb, and pull. Now remember, we're counting our slip knot as our first stitch. So now we have 1, 2 stitches on our needle. We only need a total of 5 to begin. So again, point at your thumb, wrap around and secure, finger around, secure, through, and pull. There's 3, there's 4, and 5. Okay, now that you have 5 stitches on your needle, we're ready to begin. Bring in your second needle, wrap around your small finger, and we're going to do the garter stitch. And if you remember right, on the garter stitch, that means that we are going to knit every row. So there will be no purling in this project at all. So begin by coming in from the left-hand side of the stitch, from the front to the back, pushing through, wrap your yarn around from behind, bring the yarn through, and off your needle. You're going to knit this entire first row. So you're going to knit 5 stitches. I'm on 3 and 4 and 5. Turn and begin again. We're going to knit 2 rows of 5 stitches, and then we're going to begin our increase. So we've just knit our first row. Let's knit our second row. Again, from the front, making sure that your yarn is behind because we're knitting, not purling. Go through the process again and do 5 stitches on this row. So front to back, around, through, and off. Okay? So once you finish these first 2 rows of garter stitch, that's knit every stitch, now we'll begin the part where the pattern will begin to show. I'm going to show you how to do an increase. You're going to knit the first 2 stitches. So go ahead and knit the first 2 stitches with me, just like this. and then you're ready to do an increase. All an increase is adding one more strand of yarn so that on the next row you'll be able to knit there. Okay? So in order to get an additional strand of yarn, my yarn begins from behind. I'm going to bring it between the needles and forward into the front of my work. Now usually when your yarn is in the front of your work, you would think that meant it was time to purl. But we're doing an increase, so don't purl, we're going to knit again. Now it'll feel awkward because the yarn should be behind. So go ahead and slide your needle through. This time, because the yarn is in front instead of behind, you'll need to take it back to its initial location, around the needle, and then bring it through. When you slide this off, if you look now at your right hand needle, instead of having 3 stitches there, you'll have 4 stitches there. You've just done an increase. So let's finish this row and I'll show you the increase again. When we've completed this row, instead of having 5 stitches, we will now have 6. So if you count there, you'll see 6 stitches. And if you look closely, you'll see there are 2 regular stitches and then kind of a strange stitch. It looks a little bit diagonal, and you'll even see a bit of a hole, and then you'll see 3 more regular stitches. That hole is the beginning of our pattern. So it is supposed to look that way. It isn't a mistake. And as the pattern progresses, you'll begin to see that show up. So go ahead and turn your piece around, and we're ready to begin our next row. Every row from this point on out until we have 50 stitches on our needle will be done exactly the same. We will knit 2 stitches, we will do an increase, and then we will continue to knit across the entire row. So begin with me here. We're going to insert, knit our first stitch, knit our second stitch. We're ready now for our increase. Remember, we're just going to bring the yarn around to the front, then begin the next knit stitch, bring the yarn all the way around behind, around that needle, through and off. And now instead of having 3 stitches on your right needle, you will have 4, and then you can continue the rest of the row in a regular knit stitch. Let's do that again. We'll turn around. If you count how many stitches, there are now 7 because we've actually increased. Again, we're going to continue to increase 1 stitch each row until we have a total of 50 stitches on our needle. So again, knit the first 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. Now we're ready to do our increase. We're going to bring our yarn from behind, between the needles, and in front. We're going to knit our 3rd stitch. And now if you look at this side, you'll have 4. Continue to knit across the rest of the row. And now we have 8 stitches on our needle. Now if you pull it down, if you've noticed, every time I complete a row, I kind of pull on the bottom. That's to make sure that all of my stitches are even, all of my stitches are nice. And as you can see, as we turn it back around to begin our next row, you'll see some holes beginning to develop. I'll use the needle to point so you can see what I'm talking about. Right here, you'll see a hole. That was from our first row where we did our first increase. Right here, you'll see a hole. That was from our next row where we did an increase. These holes are what is going to make the pattern around the edge of the dishcloth. So let's continue in this manner. Knit 2, increase 1, knit across the rest of the row until we have a total of 50 stitches on the needle. I now have 50 stitches on my needle, and so now we're ready to begin the decreases. If you look at our sample right here, you can see that it increases and then it begins to decrease. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now, is to decrease the stitches. Make sure you count and have 50 stitches going across the top before you begin your decreases. All right? So let's squish it all together. That makes it easier to work with, closer to keep in your hand. and we're ready to begin. Go ahead and load your fingers with your yarn. We'll knit 1 stitch this time. Now the next part is kind of tricky, so watch closely. We're going to knit 2 stitches together. So if you watch closely, I'm going to skip the first stitch, come to the second stitch, slide my needle under and actually through both stitches. If you can see right here, my needle has actually gone through both stitches. I'm going to bring my yarn from behind and complete the knit stitch and slide both of those off. So where there were once 2 stitches, now there's 1. All right? Now we're going to go ahead and keep our pattern intact by doing our increase stitch. So bring the yarn from the back to the front, do a single knit stitch, slide it off, and knit the next 2 stitches together. So again, come to the second stitch, go through both stitches with the needle, wrap around from behind, pull through, and slide both stitches off. Now at this point you should show 5 stitches on your needle. We've actually worked with 7 stitches from the row before. We've decreased 2 and increased 1 to maintain our pattern. Now I know that sounds confusing, but as we work through it, you'll begin to see why we're working it just exactly this way. After you've completed, so you have 5 stitches on your right hand needle, go ahead and complete the rest of the row by knitting your way across. If we think through this pattern, what we've been doing to this point is we've been increasing every row, and the increase has left this beautiful lacy design around the edge. So we need to continue to incorporate that design, which is why we're still doing an increase on each row, even though our goal is to have less stitches on the needle at the end of each row. That's why we're knitting 2 stitches together, is to decrease those stitches. So at the end of the row we'll have 1 less stitch on our needle. Because we're increasing 1 to keep our pattern, we actually are having to decrease 2. I'm almost to the end of the row. We'll turn and we'll begin again. When you get to the end of this row, you should go back, double check, recount how many stitches there are, and you should have 49 stitches on your needle. By the time you've completed your second washcloth, you'll probably be knitting just this fast too. Okay, we're at the end, we're ready to turn around and begin again. So let's review the decrease that we're doing. We're going to knit 1 stitch. We're going to do a decrease by knitting 2 stitches together. So remember, slide your needle in to through both stitches at the same time. Complete the knit stitch. Whoops, we all make mistakes. Good thing we saved it. Bring your needle in through the second stitch, through both stitches at the same time. Complete that stitch, slide it off the needle. Do your increase, don't forget your increase, we want to maintain that pattern. Knit the next stitch. And then knit the next 2 stitches together for our final decrease. Stop and check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You should have 5 stitches on this row before going. And then knit across the rest of your row. When you get to the end of this row, you should have 48 stitches on your needle. All right, let's review one more time. We'll knit the first stitch, decrease by knitting the next 2 together, increase to maintain the pattern, complete that increase stitch by knitting the 1, and decrease again by knitting the next 2 stitches together, Stop and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're ready to finish the rest of the row. So go ahead and knit across till the end of the row. So you're going to continue to decrease each row until you only have 5 stitches left on your needle. At this point, you should have 5 stitches left on your needle. Your pattern should have completed itself, going down both sides and go all the way around the dishcloth. Now we're ready to cast off. You cast off the same in any project that you complete. So pay attention, because this is a skill that you're going to use in every knitting project that you do. Okay, in order to cast off, we're going to start by knitting the first stitch. We're going to knit the second stitch. This is where it gets tricky. Now you're going to take the needle in your left hand, insert it into that first stitch, pull it over the top of the second stitch, and slide it off the needle. Now you're going to knit another stitch, go back to the first stitch, insert your needle, the left hand needle, insert it, and then pull it over the top of the other stitch. We'll do another. Knit the stitch, then use your left hand needle, go to the first stitch, pull it over the top of the second stitch and off the needle, and the final stitch, knit it, bring your left needle into the first stitch, pull it over the top of the second stitch, and now you'll have 1 stitch left on your needle. At this point, you can remove your needles. You can cut your thread. Take the end of the thread and slide it through the loop. Pull it tight, and you have now cast off. Your ends will look the same at the top and at the bottom. You can take these ends and thread them onto a yarn needle and work them back in, or you can just clip them close. It's up to you. Either way, you've now just completed your very first project. You're officially a knitter, and you can use it in your kitchen to wash your dishes or however you want to use it. But you'll see your pattern completes all the way around the edge. There's a front side and a back side that look the same because you've used the garter stitch. So you've knitted every row. You've learned to decrease and increase in order to get the pattern, and now you've learned to cast off. So congratulations, you've completed your very first knitting project.